the way we are made as people with the ability to know by revelation, by the Spirit of God, God Himself. Imagine Moses talked to God face to face. When Jesus was here, we see that people knowing Him and not knowing Him. They did not see Isaiah 53:1, and then some did. 1 John chapter 1. The spirit and the heart. So here's a little Bible psychology class, a little lesson in Bible psychology, and it is like if I draw a house like this, and we say the house is the mind of man, then we understand in the scripture that the man's mind is blinded. This is Ephesians 4:18. There's a blindness in the mind of man regarding God. Is it true that a man does not know God? He is aware of himself. He is aware of his environment. He's aware of. He believes in God, but he does not know God. Remember, this is what we're saying. Hosea 6:2. Would you turn there? Read that verse to your neighbor, who's sitting right next to you. Then shall we know if we follow on to know the Lord. Then shall we know if we follow on to know the Lord. How do you know? When the mind is darkened or the mind is blinded, then how do you know? And this is what Romans 3 says about sinful people. We don't know the Lord. We don't know Him. Okay? There are so many people that worship, but they don't know what. John 4:22. Him you ignorantly worship, the unknown God. Acts 17:26. Remember? Unknown God. They don't know Him. They ignorantly worship. Okay? So how does it happen? How does light come into the mind? And this is how I like to draw it this way. I put a skylight here in the roof. And what goes into the mind house is light. Light enters into the mind, and the light goes in through the whole mind. Now the mind knows. This is essentially revelation. And the light, this comes through the heart, the new heart, and the spirit. And this is Ezekiel 36:26. Ezekiel 36:26. And the promise that Christ gave to us so we would know. Psalm 119, the entrance of your word gives light, gives understanding to the simple. 133. So this is an actual phenomenon that happens with a person, that actually they know or understand. It's Ephesians 1:18 and 19. Now notice the way I'm teaching you. What am I doing as I'm teaching you? I'm using the authority is what? Behind what I'm saying. What is the authority? It's the Bible. So I'm using Bible verses. This is why we refer to the Bible. You can say, yeah, Pastor Shelley, yeah, that's your opinion. Or, yeah, you think it is like that, but how do you know that, right? And so I use the Bible verse and invite you to look it up. and read it and think with me about this, because I don't know. I don't know. I'm not any different from anybody else, but I do refer to the Bible as a student of the Bible, and this is the authority. How is this different from a liberal theologian? Okay, how do I? What's that? Yeah, how what is a liberal? I've got a little list I want to give you. Liberalism is no Bible, okay? They may use the Bible here and there as a little storybook or something. What is a theologian? We got number one, liberal, you can write that down, liberal. Number two, neo-orthodox. This is theology, right? Liberal theologian or theology. Okay, this is reason and feeling and conscience. This is how they teach and live. And the reason why they do it is because they don't have the Bible as an authority. They use reason as authority. So you say to a liberal, did Jesus walk on water? No, he didn't. That's just a story. Did Peter walk on water? No, I don't believe that. Why? Because of reason. People don't walk on water. What do you feel about God? I feel God loves me. Okay. Is there a hell? No, there's no hell. Why isn't there? Because I don't feel that God would do that. There isn't any hell. So there's the liberal theologian who has theology based on their reason and their feeling and their conscience. They might even say it's wrong for somebody to suffer, and I understand that. We don't want anybody to suffer. And in my conscience, I can't imagine anybody going to hell for anything that they have done in this life. That's how their theology is derived from this. What is a neo-orthodoxy? Neo-orthodoxy is they are basically, and I'll put down here Karl Barth. He's the one that is kind of the guru for it, the theologian that let's see, when was he? 1882. I think in 1968 he died. And he basically was saying, well, we're not liberal, we have the Bible, but we can pick and choose from the Bible what it is that we're believing. And yes, we believe Jesus is the Son of God. Yes, we believe. But the Garden of Eden story, we don't believe that is historical. Why don't you believe that? Because it's not sensible to us. Yeah, we can't believe that. It just doesn't make sense. Or Jonah in the fish. So they pick and choose from the Bible what it is that they believe. But they are, like some of them may be born again Christians. Yeah, it depends. But the church itself is generally like liberal, where they are able to pick and choose from the Bible what it is that they are believing, and based on different criteria. And it would also depend on the pastor himself. The next group is, and this is conservative. It could be also orthodox. You could use that word, meaning the apostolic teaching of the apostles in Acts 2. They continued in the apostolic doctrine. This is the generally the biblical revelation of the doctrines of God, the doctrines of Christ. And there are different branches of conservative theologians. Even some Catholics you could consider somehow conservative, but their theology is different from ours. And then you have conservative, you can have Catholics in that category, and of course, like us who are Protestants who are saying our authority, this is a question of authority, is the Bible. The Bible is the supreme authority for our doctrine and our thinking and our practice. This is 2 Timothy 3:16. So the Bible is the primary criteria for what it is that we're believing. Why? Because Jesus taught this. My words, they are spirit and they are life. Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from his mouth. So we have, okay, I got the black one. We have the mixing of, here are verses for you, mixing faith with the word, faith and the word. What word? This is two words in the Greek. We have words, sometimes it is graphe, which is the actual letters. You have logos, which is the thought, feeling word. This is thought. It's a philosophical term. Logos, thought, feeling word. And then you have also this word, rhema. You will hear this amongst us, rhema. It is a living word, and it is what we say, I got a rhema from God. Does anybody know what that means? When we say, I got a word from God, yeah, I have a rhema from God. Anybody have heard that before? A few of you? How about it? Anyone? I got a rhema from God. It means, it goes like this. If I get in my heart and I'm reading my Bible and I'm asking God for a word, it may be the Spirit will give me a word, like actually say something to my spirit. You could say my heart, my mind. It's somehow, I recognize that God has spoken to my heart from the Bible. So I could take a chapter, read it, and you can see here sometimes, I underline a portion or I circle, I make a little note here. It may be that particular part on the page is speaking to me. And I kind of process it in my heart, in my mind, my thought. And it's like the word coming off the page, or the word is hitting me a certain way. It may be a phrase, it may be one single word, like a Greek word or an English word. It may be the thought of an idea. Sometimes is the way I preach is that I have something kind of like in my mind that's kind of being worked. Like I think of Joseph, let's say in the Bible, I'm thinking of Joseph for a few days. And it's just kind of there, like Joseph's life. And I'm thinking about him, and it's kind of working in my spirit. I say that's a rhema. That's a living word. And it's a reference from my life, This is a way to live. Because Jesus said, man doesn't live by bread only, but he lives by the rhema, or every word that comes from God's mouth. When you read the Bible, many times we read it, and have you ever read a chapter of the Bible and not realize after you're done what you read? Like, wow, I don't even know what I just read. So I go back, I read it again, and it happens again. I don't know what I read, Like I've done that many times. So I go back again and read it, and I go, wow, hey, you don't even know what you're reading. So I may go to a commentary, help me digest what I'm reading. And or I may take my time and read it and think about it. And or go slowly with it. When I read the Bible, I think Bible college students could get some help by being taught simply read the Bible, read a chapter, read it fast, read it slow, read it very, very slow, read it very fast, read it to understand it. When you read verse 1, when you read verse 2, when you read verse 3, remember verse 2 and 1. And when you read verse 4, remember what the previous verses were. And digest it and work it. And compare it with another part of the Bible. I love that when I started to realize that I can read this part and it is relating to this part, I started to compare. And in the comparison, I realized that there's a congruent thought, a comprehensive, like bigger picture story. And that started to excite me in my heart about it. So this is how we get to know the person that is hidden from us, but the most important person in the world, in the universe, and that's the Lord. Another interesting point about knowing God is that whenever God is made, whenever He has made a free will creature, what are the types of free will creatures that He made? He made humans and angels. That's right. And another one, free will creature, not made, and that is Christ. Whenever there is free will, what does God do? He tests. Yeah, He tests them. He tests them. He finds what's really there in the heart. He tests them. Why? Because relationships don't mean much unless we find out what is really in there. And this is why we, we have so much value, because we have freedom. And when we make our decisions, then God has pleasure in us and knowing us. And this is where Lucifer fell from heaven. I like to think that he fell by his own gravity, his own weight. I like to say it that way just because, Chesterton said, I think he said that, but I like to think that God loved him, but it was Lucifer that became different because of his free will choice and in the test. And so Adam and Eve were tested in the garden and fell. And then Christ was tested. But the way that Christ overcame in the test was by the Word. Isn't that amazing? If the Word gets in me, then I'll be okay in the test. Because if the Word gets in me, I'll get to know the person. And in knowing the person, we are then equipped to handle the test and say, I love God because He has put His Word in me. Psalm 119, verse 9 and 10. Okay, so another word to know about here, and I'll finish up here, is I think you covered it, but it's inerrancy, the inerrancy of the Bible. Did you cover that? Okay. The Bible without error, true in all that it is revealing. In other words, it's not a science book, but everything it says about science is correct. It's not primarily a poetry book, but what it says about it, or how poetry. It's not a psychology book, but everything it says about the human nature is accurate and true. Many things can be said about it. So you got the word inerrancy. Hermeneutics is the science of Bible interpretation and study, hermeneutics, understanding the Bible, and how to read it, and the rules for understanding it. Law of first mention, types, and so on. The problem in the church in the history in largely has been by the church losing the Bible. So the Bible is lost by higher criticism. It's lost by liberal theologians who interpret reality through their reason, their feeling, and their conscience. And the result is the Bible is not being preached in the church. Then people don't know who God is because there's no revelation of God without the Bible. Then let me just say this one thing. This helped me a lot when I started to read Bible prophecies regarding the Messiah when I first became a believer. There are 8 Bible prophecies that Christ could not have fulfilled by his own free will. When Christ came and he read the Bible, he could say, that's a Bible prophecy about me. I believe I am the Messiah, or I want to be the Messiah, so I will fulfill the prophecy by my own free will. Do you understand that? What are those 8 that were fulfilled that he had no control over by his free will, by his choice? Anybody? Yes, there's ice cream. Time of his birth, okay. Where he was born, Bethlehem. How he was died, how much they betrayed him. They paid 30 pieces of silver to betray him. The gambling for his garment. There were 8 of them. Now there's a computer scientist by the name of Peter Stoner who plugged in possibilities for Christ fulfilling these 8 prophecies by chance. And by the way, he fulfilled 333 Bible prophecies in his lifetime, according to what, you can search it out, what I have read. Peter Stoner said the chances, and he assigned probability numbers to these prophecies. And he said it would be equivalent in number to covering the state of Texas with silver dollars 2 feet deep. 2 feet deep of silver dollars over the state of Texas. That's the number. And for one of them to be painted black, thrown into Texas, and for somebody to go in and pick up one, and to pick up the one is the same chance of Christ fulfilling these 8 prophecies just by chance. Virtually impossible. And let me give you one of them. And this is by Daniel, the prophet Daniel. Here's Daniel, the prophet, looking into the future. I'll give him a mustache. Okay, he's looking into the future. It's 536 BC when he says it. He said, when the king orders for the wall to be built in Jerusalem, and this was in the 20th year of Artaxerxes, I believe it was March 14th, according to our calendar, 444 BC, till the time the Messiah is murdered or cut off for the people. This happened in April 6th, 33 AD. He said it would be 69 7-year periods. The Jewish calendar has 360 days in a year. If you work it out, it's 173,880 days between these 2 dates. And that's what it is. And Daniel said it in Daniel chapter 9, 24 to 27. If that's so, that addresses what part of my nature? Reason. Reason says the Bible on that point is accurate. Then my reason goes further, and it is God trying to tell me something by addressing reason in me? He's helping me believe by saying, before it happens, I will tell you. Now, this information, you may be hungry for it. I want you to be hungry for it. It's in a book that I highly recommend, Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh McDowell. Demands a Verdict. Read that book. It's so nice, helpful for answering your questions of unbelief and helping you realize that there's just so much evidence that God has given to people that they can be a believer. Now, I was in Hungary about, more than 20 years ago when this happened. I met a Hungarian IT guy, a software engineer on the street, and I said, he said, I don't believe in God. I said, I can prove to you the Bible is trustworthy. He said, you can't. I said, I can. I'll meet you if you want. He said, I'll meet you. I said, in 45 minutes, I can show you. I said, I'll meet you in that McDonald's restaurant tomorrow at 4 o'clock. He was there. He came. I was there. We sat. Within a half an hour, tears are running down his cheeks. He's like seeing it, like what I'm saying. He interpreted for me 5 days ago in Hungary. He's a friend of mine. We meet every year I go to Hungary. We have a little bit of a 3-minute ceremony of appreciation for what God did in his life. Like God saved him, and God did this in his life. And it was using reason to say, you have to decide, is this book, is it reliable, and can it be an authority for your thinking, your believing, and does it speak to your spirit? That's an important issue in theology. Is it? So that's the class, my part.